You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series and syndicating for the A-List Online. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and what follows is a conversation between me and Jack O'Neill. Jack is the frontman for Sydney's Slow Culture. The reason for the conversation is to promote Slow Culture's brand new EP for 2018. It's a self-titled affair. So let's have a listen to what Jack has to say. Here we go. How you going?
Not bad, man. How you doing?
Mate, plugging away. I think we've finally got something resembling bloody spring arriving in Queensland at the moment, which means that it's a fairly balmy evening, mate, but I'm not complaining. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, man. It's looking like spring down here as well.
Yeah, you're in Sydney, aren't you?
That's it. Yep.
It's an interesting night, actually. I had a chat to a fella from a band called the No Goods just before you. You're both on Firestarter, obviously. But I was explaining to him, as I'll explain to you, I so rarely get an opportunity to talk to bands from Sydney. It's just one
of that so?
Yeah, it's just Sydney. I don't know. I've got my own theories on things. I used to be in a band called Velveteen, who was based in Sydney, actually. So I know a little from my time in Velveteen. I think I understand a little bit about the Sydney scene, circa the early 2000s. Anyway, things have probably changed immensely since then. But
yeah,
it's a city that. It's home to almost 6 million people at this point. It's a truly global city. There are niches and there are pockets of people, and people tend to stay in them, I think, and they don't sort of tend to get out and experience other parts of the city. And also, you got those bloody awful lockout laws.
Yeah, that didn't help. That didn't help at all.
Which just makes it so
hard.
hard.
I get what you mean about the niche thing, though. That's definitely something that we see.
Are you guys in the inner west, or whereabouts are you guys?
Yep, we're in the inner west, so we're in that kind of circle, I suppose.
When I was coming through, Newtown was the place to be. Sandringham Hotel. There was too many places on King Street. I think it's King Street. Is that the main street there?
Yeah, that's on there.
Yeah, there was about 4 or 5 places to play at that time, and it wasn't even that competitive to play there because I think they were playing live music most of the night. Of course, playing Monday through to Wednesday night meant that you didn't get much of an audience. But if you got sort of second band on the bill or what have you on a Friday night, it usually meant that you were playing to say 80 people or so, and you felt like you were a bit of a rock star.
Yeah, that's definitely. Like a time, I suppose, as like a Sydney sider, but also as a musician, definitely a time that you hear a lot about. But you're right, it has changed a lot. You're lucky to, if you're lucky, you'll draw a crowd of 20.
Yeah, it was like that back then too. It was pretty bad like that, like trying to play in places like Parramatta and the like. You had bloody struggled to get hardly anybody. You were virtually playing to your girlfriends, your friends, and the other bands.
Yeah, it's a lot like it's. I think it's probably always had an element of that. I think we kind of glamorized Sydney from the 80s and whatever, when you had bands like In Excess and whatever coming up in the pub scene, and I think we all kind of glorify that era in a way.
Well, I think
they had to play to no one too. Once upon a time.
Yeah, and they did, and they earned their stripes, but Sydney was a place that fostered some of the best music this country's ever produced, and probably a lot of the best music this country's ever produced. So, Divinals, Icehouse, Midnight Oil, you mentioned In Excess there. In Excess might have come from Perth, but they cut their teeth, as Cold Chisel did, as we know, in Sydney. I know Cold Chisel were originally from Adelaide, but it was the Sydney scene that actually brought the best out of them. And they were able to play, and I just read Tex Perkins's book. Now, he's a Queensland lad, and he moved down to Sydney, and he was talking about back in the late 70s and early 80s in Sydney, you could pull a decent-sized crowd on any night of the week. Yeah. And he was playing in some pretty bloody obscure acts and some you had to be fairly inebriated, put it that way, to really sort of get a sense of enjoyment out of some of the stuff that he was putting out, I think, by his own admission. But, 35 years has certainly been a long time. But you talk to people from New York and they say the same thing. If you're going to compare big cities, I think it's just a big port town issue in that New York's gone through the same sort of change where there are barely any venues in Manhattan. And, of course,
true.
CBGB's was once there and there are a lot there, but they've gone. They've gone the way of the dodo as rents skyrocketed and people who own the buildings sought to capitalise on property prices. And I wonder if the same things happened in Sydney along with these bloody lockout laws.
I'd wager a bet on it. I reckon personally. Just from what I've seen, there's a whole bunch of high rise going up, and not a lot of soul in the place.
It's a hard city to live in Sydney, in my view. Do you find it that way?
Yeah, definitely. I think. I mean, just as a person, but as a musician, it's gut wrenching at times. Really. I mean, there's no other way around it. Obviously, you keep doing it, and you're doing it because you love what you do, and all of that. But yeah, it's definitely tough.
Which is a shame because I really enjoy this album, or this EP, I should say, of yours here. I'm truly enjoying it.
Thank you, man.
And I'm not just saying that. It's music that I find myself increasingly being drawn toward because it's very thoughtful music, but it's music, in my view, that suits a variety of applications. So you can put it on as an accompaniment to a barbecue. I'm a father with 2 kids, so I've had it on around the kids earlier on tonight in the car. And believe me, they tend to tell me to turn things bloody off and put on Frozen or Elsa, as they call it. You'll get to know these things once you're a parent, believe me. But they didn't do that with yours, which is wonderful. And
that's amazing, man. That's actually very heartwarming to hear.
Well, yeah, cool, man. I'm glad it is because it's such a great mix of dreamy soundscapes, dub and prog. So they were the 3 things that I came up with. I couldn't actually compare it to anybody out there in the market. I mean, I think if I was going to be lazy, I'd say, yeah, Tame Impala and Chairlift and stuff like that. But I think you've got your own groove going on here.
We like to think so. I think we've been in a band for so long now, and we all have our own influences and our own ways of going about making music and listening to music that I think it all kind of comes together as something that's quite, us.
Something else that really stood out, and it stood out because, as you know, these bloody awful iPhone speakers don't do music like yours any justice. But you were cutting through, even notwithstanding apparently this wonderful technology that makes everything sound like it's coming out of a $2 speaker. But the drumming, mate, Ben Grover's, I believe your drummer's name is. The drumming...
Yep, that's his name.
The drumming stood out, man, so I've got to give him a big compliment here. For me, it's one of the performances of the year on a recording. Because
I cannot wait to tell him that. He'll be tough.
Well, the addition to that, and probably the reason for it, is I'm a bass player. I'm a career bass player, so I'm constantly listening to groove and how the groove accompanies the melody. Now, where he's done an outstanding job is marrying up the groove to the acoustic guitars. So my question for you would be, did you guys focus a lot on that? We kind of, our writing approach is usually to write something that's quite stripped back, and then build upon it from there. So a lot of the writing that went into it was me with an acoustic guitar and Ben with a padded up drum kit. So I don't think it was conscious, but I suppose, yeah, in a subconscious way, we definitely linked up more with the guitars than maybe with the bass. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it sounds like I'm glad that it was one of those things that just happened, because it actually sounds like as though you've spent an enormous amount of time poring over the beats and the rhythms and making sure that they fit in with what's going on. So to hear that it's a natural thing and it's something that just not just happened. I realise you've got to work on these things, but it's a result of very obvious talent. It's a great thing, and I'd encourage, and because I'm going to release this as a podcast episode and I can't play the music on the podcast series, these podcast episode, but I'd encourage anybody listening. And is the EP released yet? Is it available on iTunes yet?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up everywhere.
Okay, so have a listen to this drumming and have a listen to the way that it marries up with the cadence of the acoustic guitar, because I also play the guitar, and I know that finding a drummer who understands the syncopation of an acoustic guitar strum is bloody hard. It's really hard. Oftentimes you end up just giving up and just doing big open chord strums because the drummer's being too busy. But he's not done that. It's very tight, compact drumming that really complements the playing. So there you go.
Yeah, I cannot wait to tell him that he will be over the moon. He's a very hard worker.
Wonderful.
Driven kind of drummer.
Excellent. All right, so lyrical themes across this album here. Is there anything that you focused on?
Man, it's pretty all over the place, to be honest, because it was written over such a long period of time. So when we got this band together, we basically just left school, and I mean, we were all kind of trying to figure out our way in the world and experiencing a whole bunch of different stuff all at once. So a lot of the lyrical kind of themes and words and whatever, it was written like over multiple months, like consistently adding to it, and you kind of build this like in my head I was building like a collage of like the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay. And are they things that happened to you personally, or are they observations?
I suppose it's a bit of both. I kind of lose track of what's autobiographical and what's just a statement along the way. I know that Pig is a much more autobiographical song, in that it's about a story I was told when I was younger. I don't really want to go into details about what the story was, but yeah, I mean, it kind of just flows out at the end of the day. Like, a lot of the time when you're writing lyrics, you feel like you're forcing it. So you tend to get more and more cryptic just to kind of bury that feeling.
Yep.
And then when you realize that it's too cryptic, you try to like do a 180 and try to make sense of it. And that's kind of where the finished product ends up.
Yeah, so there's a few clues in there if people are going to study the lyrics as to what it might be about.
Yeah, definitely.
So the other thing that I'm really impressed by about it, the EP, is the way it's recorded. Okay, so there's a really nice balance on here. So who did you use as did you guys produce it yourselves and you just worked with an engineer, or tell us about the recording process?
So when we went in to do this EP, we had the skeletons of the songs that were going to appear on there. And we're recording at a studio called A Sharp Studios. It's based in Western Sydney. And we'd known the engineer there, Richard Lake, for a few years. So we were on, speaking terms, and we had this idea of we're going to do an EP. And I think, when we went in there, we were all probably overconfident in the songs, and he basically dismantled it completely. And he really tried to make us focus on melody and song structure and how do you get the point across quicker, but not kind of concede any of your artistic leanings or whatever. So the real process of it was the EP was kind of written in the studio. A lot of what we did in there was kind of on the fly, and when we figured something out that worked with it or worked within the structure of the song that we had, we kind of just laid it down. So yeah, we're kind of permanently in debt to Richard for giving us that much studio time.
So was it one of those things where you came in and went, Richard, we've got this wonderful music to share with you and we want to record it right now, and did he let you down gently, or was it one of those things where he goes, lads, pause, we've got to talk about this?
It was a mix of both. You never feel like he's being harsh, but he's very direct.
Yeah.
So if something wasn't really cutting it, it wasn't a conversation, which caused I don't think it caused any tension. There were a few times where I was annoyed or frustrated because I wanted it to be finished, but in the long run, I mean, you go through this period after you finish the project that you're working on where you don't like it and you can see all the flaws in it, but even after 2 or 3 months of it being out, I really like this record. I think we did really well.
I do too. I think you've done magnificently well. And just talking about the best way to listen to it now, is that vinyl, do you think? And one of the preferred ways that I like to listen to music, and believe me, I'm no Luddite, I just love the whole process of unwrapping a cassette, taking it out, putting it into a vintage cassette player, one that I've got, one that I found on Gumtree, fella up here that I bought it from out in the western suburbs of Brisbane. what would you say is the best medium or method to listen to this music?
Sure. Well, fortunately, I haven't heard it on vinyl yet, so that might be. We are thinking of doing a vinyl pressing in the near future. But until then, I think the best way to listen to this EP is headphones. I wouldn't really say it's. I mean, just from a personal standpoint, I wouldn't really say it's something that I'd put on at like a party, or even over speakers. Particularly, I think it's something that like it's kind of a personal listen. It's something that you listen to whether you're on the bus or you're walking and you've got your headphones in, or you're just I don't know sitting down doing nothing. But it's kind of like the experience we were going for was more of like an immersive kind of experience where you were pretty lost in the music. So I suppose headphones kind of lend to that.
I'd say it would be a magnificent accompaniment to a psychedelic. I reckon it would aid some music, aid and assist remarkably well, and I think this is music that would do that.
So, yeah, we agree quietly.
Yeah, I know you've got to be careful with these things, but gosh, nobody's saying we do or we don't. But it's music that I think it's music that takes you on a journey. And it's incredibly visual music, and of course that goes hand in hand with what I've just described.
Totally, and I suppose one of the kind of key points that we were thinking of when we were writing these songs was we like psychedelic music. We like music that's kind of drenched in reverb and delay, and it's imaginative, and it kind of suits that kind of vibe. But we didn't want to be a retro act at all. So it was kind of, we were taking elements of I suppose you'd call it psychedelia from like the trip hop era in a lot of ways, like Massive Attack.
Tricky.
Even Canada in there.
Yeah, I heard a bit of Tricky through it too, actually. I should have mentioned that earlier, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that was, if it assists with the music, then of course we're all for that.
How far do you want to take this, and how far do you think you can take it?
It's a big question. For me, I don't find the kind of enjoyment that I get from music in anything else. In terms of creativity or just like what I would like to do for the rest of my life. It's a frustrating thing, writing a song. It's very frustrating at times, but it's kind of the one thing that I don't really I can't seem to put it down. It's a bit like, it's kind of addictive in a way. So in that sense, obviously I'd like to play music, on and on and earn an income from it, but I don't think we're particularly aiming to be, mega pop stars or anything. I think, at this point, we'd all really be just happy to earn like a decent living and be comfortable. And write music.
I think about these things because I'm 40 years of age, okay, so it's crucially important that musicians as talented as yourself find a way to make sense of the commerce of your music. Okay, so what I mean by that is, it's obvious what I mean effectively, but what I'm really saying is that what's the best avenue that you can make money from doing this the simplest way? What's the easiest way that you can do it? And this is one of the few times where it just came to me. Now I'm doing a screenwriting course at the moment. Your music would go really well accompanying stuff on the big screen, whether it be Netflix style series or a movie or what have you. It's music that I think screenwriting is all about less dialogue. It's about effective scenes, effective use of visuals, and that means effective use of music to accompany the visuals. So yours is music that I think that if you could find a way to get to know some screenwriters quite well, and therefore some producers, directors, even actors, that sort of thing, and if you could expand that way, I actually think your music would find a home accompanying visuals. So we've already talked about the
Totally.
visuals. So is this something that you've thought about before, or is this a brand new concept that we're effectively discussing tonight?
No, no. I mean, I suppose over the last year, we've been getting increasingly interested in the business side of things, and I think it's not really a point of embarrassment for a musician anymore to be interested in the business side. We're not really hiding from that idea that we want to make money. We have to eat.
Well, you need to make money.
So
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
so we've been talking a lot about the ways in which a group like us could make that kind of money, and the screen is definitely the best option for us that we can see, on top of touring and merchandise. So over the next little while, I really do think that we're going to try to push for a spot in a Netflix special or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's music that kind of like suits that area. And but at the same time, we've always wanted to be like a hard-working band. So touring in the future is I hope going to be a very big part of our success. I think live music is always going to be the top form of music. Experiencing something live is like nothing else.
So speaking of that, have you got plans to come up here anytime soon?
We tried to book a tour this year, but we're still completely doing this on our own.
Yeah.
So organizing all of the bands and the hotels and whatever kind of just got over my head.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
But in the next few months, we're going to be heading back into the studio to record some new singles. And we'll, after that, hopefully be doing a tour of the East Coast. So yeah, definitely.
Just loop back around to the visual aspect of things again. I really like this EP cover that you've got here. Is there a specific story behind the astronaut?
Yes. So that artwork is done by a man named Stephen McFarlane, and he is the friend of Ben's dad, longtime friend. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where Ben got the artwork from, but it was gifted to him. We've got it in Ben's room, actually. And I've known Ben for years now, almost 10 years. So for ages, I would go to his place and I would see this artwork. In the back of my head, I think I always thought that would be a really good album cover. Then when it came time to figure out what the album cover was, I kind of just pointed to it. And Stephen was kind enough to let us use it.
I wouldn't describe it as minimalist, but when you look at it initially, you're thinking, okay, I've got this, but the more you look at it, the more you see. There's a lot going on there, really.
It is a bit like that, yeah.
So, it sounds like an oxymoron saying it initially it looks minimalist and the more you look, but that's how it is. You think, okay, I call it an astronaut. It's a guy with a jetpack, the green suit and flying, and there's this fella who looks like he's got a blue face. Actually, the rest of him isn't blue. There's all these things you start picking up on, and it really suits the music well.
I think, like, for us, we were looking at the themes of the EP and the overall music, and a lot of it is just so kind of cryptic. So, it's very up for interpretation. I think we needed an artwork that was as well. We couldn't come out and say this is what this represents. You can really look into that artwork and come up with your own meaning for it, which is important to me anyway.
Yep, indeed. All right, mate, I'll wrap things up. Now, you mentioned that the EP's out there for public consumption, but what mediums and what streaming mechanisms or what have you, how can people get in touch with you guys and how can they listen to your music?
Sure. Well, anyone listening can find us over at our Facebook, Slow Culture Band, I think it is. I should probably double check that.
It is, yes, at Slow Culture Band. Yep, you're right.
That's the one. All good. And you can find all of the updated, tour dates and just general information there. You can stream us over at Spotify, which is where I stream all my music. And Bandcamp, we're all up over Bandcamp, and we have I think we still have a few shirts to sell. If anyone's interested in buying a shirt,
whereabouts are they
I'll work on it.
Is that on the website, on the Facebook page here?
That'll be on our Bandcamp.
Bandcamp, okay, good old Bandcamp. I do love Bandcamp, I've got to say.
It's pretty good, huh?
Yeah, I just I've gotten there's just the networking side of it. You listen to one artist and you think, God, where else can I find music like this? And Bandcamp makes suggestions, and lo and behold, most of it's fantastic stuff. It's not
exactly.
It's not a marketing-driven thing, is what I'm saying. It's more of an algorithm-driven thing about the music that you like, as opposed to what someone's trying to push to you.
Yeah, it's great in that way. I also just think it's really cool to have kind of your own store set up there and kind of control the prices and all of that stuff.
Indeed, yeah. All right, mate. Thanks so much for the chat. I've really enjoyed this one, and congratulations on a wonderful EP. It's certainly one of my favourite releases of the year. So it's one of those EPs that I'll be listening to a lot longer beyond the album review cycle and the interview cycle. So congratulations on doing that, and really the best of luck in the future. I really hope that you take this as far as you want to take it.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. It means a lot, and I got to say this is the best interview that I've done
thank you,
so
mate.
far in my short career. Definitely.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, mate. No, I really appreciate you giving me that feedback. You have been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series and syndicating for the A-List Online. That was a conversation between me, Andrew Mackay-Smith, and Jack O'Neill from a Sydney outfit who go by the name of Slow Culture. Thank you so much for listening.